Hey guys, Doug here. After creating software and working on teams for almost 10 years, wow, dinosaur, I have mastered the forbidden jutsu of spotting an inexperienced software developer. Before you get all upset that I'm just trying to throw shade on beginners, just know that this forbidden jutsu can only be mastered from looking within. I have done them all. The first dead giveaway is if a developer does not ask any questions. This doesn't mean just in one-on-one meetings, but also planning meetings. Chances are, if you're not asking questions during these meetings, you don't really understand the full scope of what you're getting into. There is always something to be clarified when working on a project. For example, you should always be asking, how many users are there going to be? Do other systems need to access this information? Can I afford for this data to be lost? Does it need to be retried if the request fails? There are really only two reasons why I didn't ask questions when I was first getting started. The first reason was being too shy or being worried about asking a question that was a stupid question. And to be fair, most questions are not stupid questions. And the second leads us into our next way to spot an inexperienced developer, and that's ego. It is so common for inexperienced software developers to be really arrogant and let their ego get in the way, and I'm no exception. For me, it was a case of not knowing what I didn't know. When you're laser focused on a project, it's easy to put your blinders on and be narrow-minded. A few years ago, if you asked me to create a service for your app to collect user sign-ins, I know exactly what I would do. I would set up a Spring Boot web service, I'd pump it into a MongoDB database, done. Easy. I had a stack that I wanted to use for every project no matter what it was, because this was the perfect stack. But when making this suggestion, a couple of things I didn't consider: licensing, number of users, forgot password process, how to store passwords, login, will it be OAuth? What about JWT? Cleaning the user input, and hosting. Until you can openly acknowledge the fact that you probably don't know everything about the project that you're working on, you're probably too arrogant. Before we start talking about how inexperienced developers write code, leave a comment down below and tell me how you can spot an inexperienced person in your field. Before I learned about reactive patterns and libraries, I used Boolean flags for everything. In my first job out of college, one of the things I had to do was make sure that the main dashboard of this UI didn't load until the user was logged in and the menu was loaded. So what did I do? Async await? Promised then? Observable subscribe? Nope, I give you
Boolean hell.
If you think that's bad, wait until you try to read code that you wrote 3 months ago and not 3 minutes ago. Just going out on a limb here and saying that you didn't ask about design patterns, classes, styles, or formatting for the code, chances are you're writing spaghetti code. Even if your classes and code look good in a vacuum, if they don't match what's in the rest of the code base, it's not any good. Because when another developer comes in, it might be really difficult for them to follow what you've been doing. If you can't change anything in one of your classes without breaking something somewhere else, chances are your code is on your sweater already. Especially for beginners, using versioning software like Git or GitHub seems like a real struggle. Instead of pushing code every time that you complete a task or you finish working on a bug, only pushing like weekly or even worse at the end of a major update can cause some real problems. It not only makes it really hard for the person reviewing your code to look at all the changes that you've done, but it also makes it really difficult for you to refactor if you messed something up. Think about this. You design a class wrong, but you've implemented that in 30 different places over 9 different files. Now you have to go back and adjust all of those instances after adjusting your class. Whereas if you had made smaller commits, there's a good chance that that incorrect class could have been addressed early on, and then you would not have had to go back and refactor in all those different places. I'm not sure why it's so scary to commit your code, but I see that a lot of beginners really struggle with this. And since us beginners love to push code so much, another way that I can spot a newbie is when they have a really big bunch of code that they push all at once. A bit of advice that I picked up along the way is to always be refactoring. This means that if you're jumping into a service to make some specific change, you should consider all of the code that you see on your way there or that your change interacts with as a potential refactoring to make it better. Now, don't fool yourself into thinking that just shorter code is always better code. Sometimes you can overcomplicate code by using too many inline conditionals or a bunch of shorthand notation that's difficult for other people to understand. It's pretty straightforward. Take some logic that's used all over the place and just put it into a single spot that you can reuse over and over again, and just declutter the code a bit by putting it in its own separate method or even in a utility. For a long time, my commits were always green, way more files being pushed than I was removing. It's safe to say that I was coding with my blinders on. If you made it this far in the video, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and stick around for future videos. That's all I have for you today, guys. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next one.